There's a moment that lives vividly in Assam's collective memory. A concert stage, floodlights blazing, and Zubeen Garg, standing with a mic in one hand and conviction in the other, singing not just a song but a statement. Because when Zubin sang, it wasn't always about melody. Sometimes it was about resistance. He was that rare artist who didn't hide behind fame. He spoke loudly, fearlessly, and very often controversially. About the issues that others stayed quiet on. About corruption, about inequality, about protecting the Assamese language and identity. He marched in protests, he wrote songs for causes, and he never flinched from taking a stand. To the world, he was a singer, but to the people of Assam, he was something larger, a voice that refused to be tamed. Zubin's activism wasn't born in studios or press conferences. It came from the streets, from the soil, from watching his people struggle and fight for recognition. When he spoke about the rights of indigenous communities, about the erosion of local culture, about the dangers of losing our language, he was channeling the anxiety of a generation.
য'ত গছ লাগে তাত গছ কাটি আছে য'ত গছ নালাগে তাত গছ ৰুই আছে কি ঘান্তা হ'ব তাত মুখখন মেলিলে বৰ বেয়া কিন্তু মই কিবা এটা বেয়া হৈছে অসমৰ কাৰণে সেইটো কাৰণে ওলাই আহিছোঁ মই কিন্তু ৰাজনীতিবিদো নহয় মই ৰাজনীতিৰ লগত জড়িত নহয় মই কংগ্ৰেছীও নহয় বিজেপিও নহয় মই এজিপিও নহয় প্ৰথম কথা
This episode is not just about Zubeen Garg the singer. It's about Zubeen Garg the citizen, the artist who blurred the line between stage and street. The man who turned art into action and defiance into devotion. You expect a voice to last, but sometimes the silence speaks loudest. Today we walk into the final chord of Zubeen Garg's story. Grief, questions, memory, and ask, how do we hold a legacy alive? Welcome to the second and final part of this two-part series of the personal lens, Zubeen Garg, the rebel with a rhythm. Zubin's genius lies in being many things at once. He is at home in a rural Bihu field with the dhul and pepper echoing under the stars, and equally at home on a metropolitan stage, guitar in hand, crooning to a cosmopolitan crowd. Reports and tributes after his passing described him as someone who rescued strays, supported local wildlife rehabilitation efforts, and publicly advocated for humane treatment of animals. These remembrances appeared in regional papers and eyewitness accounts. And then there were the children. Multiple contemporary reports say that Zubin and his wife opened their home and their lives to underprivileged children. Figures quoted in the press say around 15 children were taken into their care over the years, supported with schooling, shelter, and vocational help. During the pandemic, his home even became a community care center at times, offering help when hospitals were overwhelmed. These acts were widely reported as sincere, long-term commitments rather than one-off charity stunts. These acts, tree planting, animal rescue, sheltering children, reveal a different aspect of Zubin's life. He didn't separate art from obligation. The same tenderness that made him sing lullabies could in the next breath make him intervene when a child was exploited or when trapped animal needed help. Those who stood near him say his compassion was quiet, practical, and often private. The kind of generosity that doesn't ask for headlines, but that changes lives. Now coming back to his music didn't just entertain, it stitched together identity. For many Assamese youth growing up in the 90s and 2000s, Zubin's songs became our cultural memory. They were what we hummed at Adda sessions, what played in tea shops, what soundtracked heartbreak and first love. And this is what makes him unique. Zubin isn't just heard, he's felt. But Zubin is no polished star. His fans don't love him for perfection. They love him because he's raw, unpredictable, unfiltered. He's walked out of shows. He's picked fights. He has sung on shows while lying on the floor. He has sung through tears. He has refused to be contained by the very committee who invited him for Bihu function. He's forgotten lyrics on live shows and also sheepishly confessed. He's given statements that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. But instead of losing fans, his rebellion only deepened their loyalty. Why? Because in him people see truth, the refusal to be fake, the refusal to be a package. Zubin carried a rebel energy, but his energy is rooted in Assam soil. He embodies the frustrations, the restlessness, the yearning of a people who have always felt unheard in India's mainstream. Zubeen Garg's voice was never just about melody. It was a tool, a weapon, a bridge, a banner. He used music as a language of resistance. He spoke out about Assamese identity, language preservation, and social justice, often turning concerts into spaces of awareness. Whether addressing local issues or wider cultural debates, he reminded people that art could carry conviction as powerfully as words ever could. But activism is never simple, especially for someone living in the public eye. Zubin often courted controversy. He challenged political decisions, criticized systemic neglect, and defended indigenous rights. And yet, even amid disagreements or backlash, his authenticity never wavered. He didn't perform for approval, he performed for truth. Music and politics intertwined in his life naturally. Protest songs became anthems, fundraisers became concerts, and sometimes a single lyric could speak louder than a speech. Fans didn't just follow him for his voice, they followed him for his conscience. What made Zubin remarkable was this balance. He could sing a tender love ballad one day and the next belt out a fiery ode to identity protest or heritage without ever losing the emotional intimacy that defined his music. And in Assam, this was revolutionary. An artist who refused to be neutral, who refused to be silent, yet never alienated his audience. That was Zubeen Garg. And that's why people do not just cherish him for his songs, but for the values his music carry. Over the years, his fearless stances drew both admiration and criticism. He spoke openly about preserving the Assamese language, resisted moves that threatened local culture, and supported causes ranging from flood relief to youth empowerment. At several times, his statements on politics, identity, or cultural policy sparked controversy. Some called him outspoken, others provocative. But that was always part of his very being. Zubin's courage lay in speaking from conviction, not convenience. He challenged authority, yet remained beloved by the people, because his actions were rooted in authenticity, not showmanship. He wasn't afraid to offend, and he didn't always get it right. But that's what made him real. He didn't follow trends. He followed his heart, even when it cost him applause. Even his controversies became part of his narrative. They weren't distractions from his art. They enhanced his legacy. Every public disagreement, every debate, every protest reinforced what he had always been. By the 2010s, Zubin was more than an artist. He was a cultural institution. His concerts weren't just entertainment, they were events that brought communities together, celebrated Assam's diversity and identity, and inspired youth to engage with both culture and society. In the end, his life reflected a rare synthesis: the tenderness of a romantic ballad, the fire of a protest song, the pride of a cultural custodian, all embodied in one singular voice that refused to be silent. Zubeen Garg's impact wasn't limited to the songs he sang. It lives in the conversations he sparked, the causes he championed, and the cultural pride he instilled in Assam. He showed that a musician could be a citizen first, a performer second. That art and activism could coexist, even thrive together. From defending Assamese language and culture to standing up on social and political issues, he never let comfort or fame dictate his voice.
আকৌ সেইডাল লৈ মৰিলোঁ আমি আৰু বহুতে মনে মনে ভিতৰত থৈ দিয়ে ক'বলৈ বেয়া পায় ষ্টেজত নকয় মই কৈ দিওঁ মই ভয় কৰা মানুহ কাকো ভয় নকৰোঁ কাকো খাতিৰ নকৰোঁ ধ্যানতা খাতিৰ নকৰোঁ কাকো
Controversial? Yes. Fearless? Absolutely. And that fearlessness is his true legacy. Zubeen Garg was fearless, authentic, and magnetic. But he was also deeply human. Behind the powerful voice and the public persona were cracks, contradictions, and struggles. Zubeen Garg's brilliance was inseparable from his laws. His spontaneity sometimes blurred into impulsiveness, his confidence into confrontation. He could be fiercely opinionated, unwilling to conform to industry expectations or political correctness. He could be stubborn, fiercely protective of his opinions, and sometimes impulsive, traits that fueled both his art and his controversies. He was a man whose passion could tip into impatience, whose love for his craft sometimes overshadowed diplomacy. But these weren't flaws of arrogance. They were the marks of a man who felt too deeply. He poured his intensity into everything, his music, his activism, his anger, and his empathy. And there were moments of self-doubt too, times when the pressure of expectation, fame, or personal grief weighed heavily. Those who knew him closely describe a side of Zubeen that was quite reflective, even fragile, a man burdened by his own sensitivity, yet unwilling to dull it for comfort. And it was precisely these flaws that made his music resonate so powerfully. They carry not just melody but emotion, unpolished, unfiltered, human. He showed us that imperfection isn't a weakness. The vulnerability, the rawness, the imperfection, they became the texture of his voice, the subtle honesty behind every note. He didn't present a polished, untouchable celebrity. He offered a human being, complete with contradictions, and in doing so, he became profoundly relatable. His cracks made him larger than life and yet deeply approachable. They remind us that genius often walks hand in hand with imperfection and that courage is not the absence of flaws, but the refusal to let them silence you. He blurred the line between celebrity and citizen, reminding us that being loved by people means standing with them too. Zubeen Garg's legacy isn't confined to the thousands of songs he left behind. It's in the confidence he gave Assamese youth to dream without apology. It's in the way he made local sound global and proved that language is no barrier to emotion. He made it cool to be rooted, to sing in your own tongue, to wear your identity proudly, to challenge systems that silence individuality. In that sense, Zubin didn't just make music, he made a movement.
মই গান কৰিম সিনেমা কৰিম মোৰ হেতুৱে কাম মোৰ যেটো কামৰ কাৰণে পঠাইছে ঈশ্বৰে মই হেতু কামে কৰিম আপোনালোকৰ কাৰণে মৰালৈকে কৰিম মই নথকাৰ অনুভৱ যিদিনা হ'ব তোমাৰ সিদিনা অশ্ৰু নিগৰিবনে কোৱা
Zubeen Garg wasn't perfect, and that's exactly why he mattered. Because he showed us that to be human is to be messy, emotional, political, and brave all at once. His life was a melody, sometimes harmonious, sometimes offbeat, but always, always honest.
দয়া করা হে প্রভু তুমি
It was 19 September 2025. News broke like a thunderclap across Assam. Zubeen Garg had passed away in Singapore. "52 years of music, protest, laughter, and contradictions ended thousands of miles away from the land that mattered so much for him." Zubeen Garg was in Singapore, invited to perform at the Northeast India Festival. The day was meant for celebration, music, cultures, and connection. Instead, it ended in tragedy. The government of Assam announced 3 days of state mourning. His mortal remains were flown home to Guwahati. Tens of thousands thronged the streets, people from every corner of the Northeast. Vendors, students, daily wage workers, all singing Mayabini. It felt less like a funeral and more like Assam itself was trying to sing him home. He was cremated near Guwahati at Komarkusi in Sonapur with full state honours. Thousands lined roads, songs echoed, tears flowed. Assamese houses played his tracks in tribute. In the weeks that followed, tributes poured in from across India. Music channels replayed Ya Ali and Mayabini on loop. He wasn't flawless, he was fiery, unpredictable, deeply human, but he belonged wholly to his people. Even in death, he gave Assam one last gift: unity in grief, melody in mourning, and the reminder that art at its best never truly dies. Regarding his death, here's what we do know. According to multiple reports, Zubin had been swimming off St. John's Island in Singapore. Early reports suggested he first wore a life jacket. Later, he went back into the water without it. At some point during his second swim, he suffered a seizure, floated unconscious, was pulled out of the water, given CPR, and was rushed to the hospital. He was pronounced dead later that day. The official death certificate, as issued by Singapore authorities and communicated via the High Commission of India, lists drowning as the cause of death. Singapore Police Force has reportedly handed over the autopsy report and preliminary findings to Indian authorities. But the shadows of uncertainty remain. The initial media reports mistakenly claimed it was a scuba diving accident. That appears to have been incorrect. Zubin was not scuba diving at the time, he was swimming. There is ongoing debate over whether proper safety measures were in place during his swim. For example, life jacket usage, supervision, fitness to swim, given his history of seizures. A second post-mortem was ordered in Assam at the Guwahati Medical College and Hospital to cross-verify the findings. Now, what this suggests? Zubeen Garg's death seems to have resulted from a tragic combination of health vulnerability, seizure disorder plus physical risk, swimming without life jacket after prior swim, plus environmental conditions, water, fatigue, perhaps the absence of immediate rescue or medical support. This isn't definitive. Investigations are ongoing. The special investigation team from Assam is gathering evidence, reviewing CCTV and video footage, cross-checking testimonies, and seeking full cooperation from Singapore authorities. Why this matters, emotionally as well as culturally. Because Zubin wasn't just any artist. He was deeply beloved, woven into the everyday life of Assam. The ambiguity around his last moments has led to worry, grief, anger. Because when a beloved public figure dies amidst mystery, people want not just mourning, but truth and justice. Zubeen Garg's life was not an easy story to tell. It was loud and tender, chaotic and deeply rooted, a melody that refused to be tamed by genre, politics, or fame. He was sometimes angry, sometimes absurd, but always alive in a way that most of us can only dream of being. In his music, you could hear the pulse of Assam, not the sanitized, touristic version, but the raw, real one. The voice of tea garden workers, of small-town dreamers, of protesters on the streets, of lovers waiting by the Brahmaputra. He didn't sing for people, he sang from within them. And that's what makes his story more than musical. It's political in the truest sense of the word. Because every time he took the stage, he turned art into agency. Every time he spoke, even when it got him into trouble, he made it clear that silence was not an option. Zubeen was not just a man of melodies. He was a man of moments. Moments that made people question what it means to belong, to resist, to care about a place so fiercely that it hurts. Maybe that's why his death feels so personal. Because for so many of us, he was not just an artist we admired, but a mirror that reflected who we are, who we want to be, and who we sometimes fail to become.
নিগৰিবনে কোৱা মোৰ কবিতাৰ ছন্দ গানৰ সুৰ বুজিবা তুমি সেইদিনা যিদিনা মই নাথাকিম জানা তোমাৰ প্ৰিয় গীত গাবলে যিদিনা মই নাথাকিম জানা তোমাৰ প্ৰিয় গীত গাবলে
In the end, Zubeen Garg left behind something that no death can silence, a soundscape of emotions, rebellion and belonging. And perhaps that's his greatest legacy, that every Assamese heart now beats to a rhythm he once created. We grieve, we ask questions, we celebrate, we listen again differently.
দয়া কৰা হে প্ৰভু তুমি নিৰাময়
Thank you so much for walking this path with me. Do leave behind your thoughts and reflections. Until next time, this is Jayanti signing off for now.